And so we begin video number 5. Today we're going to be discussing the 5th thing that you should consider before writing a novel series, which is, how long is it going to take for you to self-edit this novel series? Or how much is it going to cost for you to have somebody else edit the series for you? There are many authors who want to write a book, but they don't have money to pay someone else to edit their work for them. So they just tell themselves, I'll just edit the book myself. Unfortunately, a lot of these people are, just being blunt here, lazy. Being a writer really doesn't mean that you're a writer. What it means is you're an editor. People will say, you need to write every day. I would say you need to edit every day. Especially if you're an independent author. Self-editing is going to be your sidekick or your arch nemesis. However way you view that. Let's look at just editing one book, okay? So the way I like to work is I write just a single chapter. And after I write that chapter, I go back and I read that whole chapter again. I read it through to see if there's any glaring typos, issues, whatever. Just the really on the surface stuff. And then once I've read through it and done those subtle edits, I'll move on and I'll write the next chapter. After I write the next chapter, I then repeat the process. I read chapter 2 all the way through and I do some subtle surface level edits. If it's good to go, I then move on to the next chapter. I will do this for the whole first half of the book. I write a chapter, I edit that chapter. I write the next chapter, I edit that chapter. When I reach halfway into the book, instead of going back and editing that last chapter I just wrote, I will actually go to the start of the manuscript and read that whole first half of the book all the way through and do some subtle edits. The reason I do this is to not only check for more surface level things, but I'm trying to get a feel for what this manuscript is about and what the tone of it is, and just kind of feel what the flow of this is so far. After that halfway point, I'll then write the next chapter and continue the process. Write a chapter, edit, write, edit, all the way to the end of the book or manuscript. When I get done, I then will go back to the beginning of the manuscript and read it all the way through for the first time. Maybe the start of the manuscript was pretty good, but then I get to the second half and there's maybe something wrong there. Maybe the big climax or something doesn't hit the way I want. And I'll go in and try to reorganize some stuff. After that, it's really good for you to take a big break from your manuscript. Set it aside. Forget about it. You won't forget about it. But try to. Try to not touch it. You'll think about it all the time, but deny yourself that urge to go back in and tweak things. Set it aside for at least 1 month. After a month, things will kind of fade in your memory. Meanwhile, new things will have emerged that you'll want to go in and change, tweak here and there, add something really significant. Maybe you think of, oh, it'd been so much cooler if there was a big fight here, or maybe so and so cheated on somebody, or whatever your story is about. You'll go in and you'll add these significant things to it, and you'll get to read it with a new set of eyes after waiting a month. After you do this, I encourage you to take another break. Maybe do another month, maybe 2 months. When you come back to your manuscript the next time, you need to be alone when you're reading it. Now, you probably were alone when you were reading it the other times, but it's important that you're really alone this third time, because what's going to make it significant this time is it's important that you read the manuscript out loud. The first 2 times, you were just reading it silently in your head. This third time, you need to read it out loud. You need to say every word, and kind of slow, so you can really understand what the flow of your writing is. Authors can come up with great sounding dialogue in their head, but when you read it out loud, it's a whole new world. Reading your writing out loud will reveal just how clunky and terrible your writing is. Reading it out loud will reveal all of the run on sentences. You might also write something that you thought sounded kind of poetic. You start getting into something called purple prose, and you thought it was really nice, lyrical, poetic, whatever. And then on the third pass, you read it out loud, and when you actually hear what you wrote and you hear the rhymes, it just sounds either corny and cheesy, and you're just like, nah, I can't do that. You can't take that serious. Or maybe it just sounds ridiculous. It sounds too formal. It's like, all right, why does this sound like 17th century Britain? And it's actually a story about just some chick trying to win like a bake-off contest. You got to make sure your writing fits the time and setting of your story. After you do this third edit, this third pass, what you need to do is take another break. Take some time off, go chill, and let it sit. And then, when you're ready, come back and read it again. But this time, when you read it, you need to change things up. If, let's say, you're printing through KDP, upload your manuscript onto KDP and get a proof copy of your book. Get a physical copy of your manuscript. It's a bit of a headache having to load stuff up and, updating manuscripts and all this crap. And it'll cost you a couple dollars, like $4 or $5 to print off a proof copy for you. Just make sure, okay? Please make sure that you do not accidentally publish your manuscript. Please be patient, be slow, and look at what you're clicking. Read what you're clicking before you do it. There are people who have made this mistake, and it's terrible for them. Don't accidentally, prematurely publish your manuscript. Get it on there, but then get yourself a proof copy sent to your home address. Have a physical copy of your book. And for that fourth pass, you're actually reading it in an entirely different format. It's not just a different font. You're reading it physically as a book. And that's, in my opinion, where the real magic happens. When you read your manuscript as a physical book, it's like you just unlocked a cheat code for life. Not only do you get to read your manuscript in a totally different atmosphere, but you can do it with an ink pen in your hand. And you get to fill that book up with all kinds of fun little scribbles and notes and stuff for yourself. You find all kinds of new issues that you never saw. When you were writing it and you were reading it over on your Word document, there were these glaring issues that you literally couldn't see. They were right in front of your face and you couldn't see them. But as soon as you get it into a print, all the blinders come off. You can see it just as clear as day. This is in addition to like formatting issues where the margins, you want to check that out too. So make sure your margins are properly done. You don't want to be too far, too short. The space at the top of the book, like how low your line is, the last line on the page. If you put your numbers at the bottom of the page, some people want to have a big gap between the numbers and the words. Maybe you don't care for whatever your thing is. Same thing with stuff at the top. So maybe at the top of the page, you've got your number pages. Maybe you've got the book title or author name, that sort of thing. You're checking all of these subtle things too, but you'll see this stuff on the first like 2 pages. You'll get that taken care of, and then you're done. And then you can focus on your manuscript, getting those edits done. After you read through the physical book and you've done all those edits, you then have to go back into the Word document on your computer, open up the physical book, and transfer all of those edits page by page, transferring it from the book onto the document. This is a slow process. After you get all of those edits transferred from the book into the Word document, take a break, chill, go and enjoy life, Go walk in the woods. Go find something to discover, something you've never seen before. Maybe hang out with friends. If you don't have friends, I don't know, watch a movie. Try to appreciate the life that you are actively trying to forget by escaping into your fictional world. Don't give up on the real world entirely. Think of it like you're taking a vacation from your fictional world and coming back into reality for a month or two. After a month or two, go back to the world of fiction. Go back into your document on the computer and reread through your story again. Do a whole nother edit. This time you're going to be reading over it and you're going to be looking at the edits that you did last time that you transferred from the book. You're going to get to see it again in a new light. As you're reading through it this time, which would be the 5th pass through your book, it's good to find fundamental, like structural kind of edits. What I mean is, look at things like dialogue tags. Is your manuscript, like, let's say you have a conversation with 2 people. Is your dialogue tags saying, Will said blank, Sarah said blank, Will said blank, Sarah said blank? If it's doing that, if this is a conversation between just 2 people and you keep adding in your taglines, that's redundant. We don't need that. If we know that this moment, this scene involves only 2 people talking, start it off with saying, William said blank. And then you can have the reply, Sarah said blah, blah, blah. And then after that, we don't need the taglines. We can just jump in and just run the dialogue, because the person who responds to Sarah is logically going to be William, since it's just a conversation between William and Sarah. If you've already done this and it just looks like a phone record, it's just dialogue, 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 dialogue. This would be a time to add in some fluff, add in some like stage direction, so to speak. Add in something like, he cleared his throat in narration, or she grabbed her head and sat down to think about what she just heard, whatever. Add in some subtle narration, like I said, stage directions. Give the reader something to envision, something more than just he said this, she said that, he said this, she said that. Bring it into reality. Give the reader something that they can see in their mind. Maybe describe how the character is pacing back and forth as he's talking because he's really angry about what's going on. Maybe describe how the woman's hand is trembling and she fumbles through her purse looking for cigarettes and she lights a cigarette while they're talking. You also want to look for any type of redundancy. This could be something like a line. Like let's say I'll use the classic Arnold Schwarzenegger line, "I'll be back." Okay, remember that expression, I'm sure. Okay, so maybe this is a cool one-liner that a character uses at some point in like chapter 3. He blows something up and everyone's like, "Whoa," and the character's like, "I'll be back." And then he walks off. Okay, cool. That was a cool moment. But then if in chapter 13 the character does it again, you can kind of get away with it. It's like, okay, this is a reoccurring trait that this character does. You could say it's a bit of like his slogan. That can be forgivable. Like, all right, it's a bit redundant, but that's his thing. He likes to say, "I'll be back," and then walk off. Okay. But if you've got another character doing it, now it creates a problem because one character's doing it and now another character's doing it. They're not the same, but it sounds like they're the same. This breaks the uniqueness of the character. You want each character to have their own things, have their own views and opinions. Now, with the "I'll be back" thing, that's pretty simple. But let's say you was talking about something that was much more what's the word? Insightful, thought provoking. I don't know what word I'm trying to think of, but basically, it's like this really deep point that you've come up with, and it's like, wow, like this character was doing some deep thought, man. Like that's wild. That's an interesting point of view that this character has come up with. That's great for that character, but you don't want another character somewhere later in the book to come up with the same exact line. The way this would happen is you personally like this way of thinking. You personally really like this belief or this philosophy, and you want to inject it into your story. You want to have a character be your mouthpiece and say this thing. Okay, that's fine. But because you added this unorganically, you just shoehorned it in there, you end up forgetting that you put it in there and you put it in again somewhere else. At this point, you would also be discovering repetition in your patterns of like events. So maybe a character makes a mistake, everyone yells at the character, and then everybody has to go on a scavenger hunt because of this character's stupidity. Okay, that's a cool little event in chapter 2. But if the character then does it again in chapter 7, you get a repeat. The character does all that again, makes this mistake, and sends everybody else on a scavenger hunt. That's kind of annoying. We've already done this. And then you notice that at the end of the book, it's basically the same thing. The character makes another mistake, and everybody has to go on this big scavenger hunt to fix this person's problems. If this happens and you, the author, find yourself kind of skimming through it because you're like, oh, here's another one of those instances of Jack being a jackass and making everybody go on a scavenger hunt. I know how this is going to go. I'll just skip. If you find that, you've got to fix that. And see, early on, you wouldn't see that. You would be like too close. Your face is too close to the canvas. You've got to back away and see the big picture. Now, after this fifth pass, this fifth edit, it might be good for you to find a beta reader. Find someone who's just a casual reader and let them read your manuscript and share their opinions about your work with you. You're not trying to find any type of in-depth, critical literary analysis. You're just wanting a general reader, just a regular Joe, to look at your book and see something like, because they're going to be so detached from your work. They have no emotional bonds to characters or anything. And they're going to be much more blunt. They're going to point out things that never crossed your mind. There's a raven way back there making some funny noises. Did you know ravens can talk like a parrot? You can teach a raven to mimic a human and say like English words or whatever. Pretty cool. But with these beta readers, they will find little details that are like they're big far away details, but they're like subtle weird things. Like they might say, why is this character always so jealous? And it, where'd that come from? You're going to be so shocked. You're like, what? And then you start thinking about it, and you're like, huh? I didn't realize I made that character like that, but yeah, my character is okay. And maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want the character to be like that, or maybe you want a scene to go a certain way, or maybe you don't, and you want to go back and change it. Unfortunately, this process is extra slow because these casual readers, they don't give a shit about your book. They're not attached to it like you are. They're not living and breathing your your manuscript, your fictional world. They're they're living and breathing their real life, doing their job, dealing with spouses and children and whatever responsibilities they got going on. You and your manuscript are the absolute last thing on their mind. So this means that they're going to live their life and do all of the stuff they want to do. And when they run out of things to do, they'll be like, oh, yeah, that book. Let me look through that. Or that file, if you send them a digital file. Let me look through that. So you might be sending off copies, digital or physical copies to beta readers, and they just ghost. They disappear. Like, where are you ever going to let me know? Like, I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to write this book, and y'all just flaked out. Where are you at? Did you ever read? It's been 6 months. Did you ever reach chapter 6? Can you tell me at least what you think up to that point? Like, tell me something. In this day and age, people are always complaining that they just don't have free time for anything. And then you find these random people and you expect them to just find time to read your book. It takes a long time. But eventually you'll find somebody, maybe a couple people, who will actually read through your work and give you some feedback. When this happens, you might find out some cool things or some sad things about your work. And you'll then go back and look through your work and make some subtle edits here and there. Maybe they really didn't like a scene and they're like, hey man, this makes no sense. Why why can't you cut it? There's no point in this. Or maybe they'll suggest that, oh man, when he got to the bridge and he was going to throw that watch off into the water, I totally thought that so and so was going to stop it, and it just felt so right. And then he doesn't stop the dude from throwing it in, and I don't know, maybe that's something to think about. Maybe you should change that. And you'd be like, wow, that makes total sense. I should do that. And so you'll go back and you'll fix that scene, or you'll remove a scene, or add a scene, or whatever. And that will qualify as like another level of editing. And that's just for one book. Now imagine you have a trilogy. Imagine you have 7 books. Imagine you have 10 books. You have to do all of those passes, all of those steps, critically analyzing, under a microscope, all the intricate details of your work for every book, every manuscript. Self-editing takes a long time. When it comes to a series, you have additional steps. Remember how I was saying that I would write a chapter and then edit that chapter, and then write another chapter and then edit that chapter? And then I would get halfway and I would start over and read all the way through the first half of the book before I continued writing the second half of the book. Okay, well, that's if you're writing a book. But if you're writing a series, then you get a new level of edits, which is you write a book and then you go back and you edit that book. And then you write the next book. And then you go back and edit through that book. When it comes to editing a series, you're going to have to read through not just a single book to see if that single book flows right. You've got to read through the entire series and see if the whole series flows right. See if the whole series feels cohesive. Finding redundancies, repetition in dialogue and themes in a single book is significant. But if you're writing a series, then you've got to make sure that that repetition, that redundancy in themes and dialogue, you got to make sure that's not happening throughout multiple books. So for the question of how long does it take to edit a novel series, to put it bluntly, it takes a long fucking time. Now, maybe you don't have a lot of free time. Well, fortunately, in our modern capitalist society, you don't have to waste your time doing stuff. That's where money comes in. If you don't want to contribute labor to it, then you can pour money into it. If you don't want to spend the time growing crops, well, then you can just pay someone else to grow the crops for you and you can just reap the benefits of their labor. You don't want to make a cheeseburger? Just have someone else make it for you. You just pay them money and they'll give it to you and you just eat it. Simple as that. When it comes to editing, well, if you don't want to do all that work, waste all that time doing the edits yourself, well, you can just pay someone else to do it. Word of caution though, there's a popular saying that is probably popular for a reason. If you want a job done right, you got to do it yourself. But hey, sayings have been wrong before. Maybe that's one of them. And you think paying someone else to do your edits is the best option. Well, let's go with it. If you're going to have someone edit your book for you, or books for you, I would say it's still important for you to do at least 3 rounds of edits. So that whole thing about write a chapter, edit, write a chapter, edit, get to the halfway, edit the first half, finish the book, edit the whole book. Take a break, come back and do it again. Take a break, come back and do it again, but this time read it out loud. I think you should do at least that before you pay someone else. Because here's the thing. From your first draft to your finished copy, there's going to be massive changes. And if you can do those changes slowly yourself, it'll be a lot easier. If you write a single first draft and then send it off to an editor to look at, it is going to be so overwhelming for that editor. They're practically going to tell you to rewrite the whole book. And it's just too much. It will overwhelm them, and then they will overwhelm you with suggestions. And that's an important detail. It's suggestions. Editors are not going to rewrite your book for you. They're going to say, you need to do this and you need to do that. And of course, those needs are their subjective opinions. You don't have to do it. You could pay someone a lot of money. They edit your book. They say, these are some issues. And then you could look it over and say, you're wrong. I think these are perfectly fine. And the editor will say, okay, well, anyway, thanks for the money. Have a great day. And then you'll publish, and then you'll read a comment online, and they'll say the exact thing that the editor warned you about. And you was like, nah, the editor don't know what they're talking about. And now you've got complaints and bad reviews talking about that very thing that you ignored. Life is fun. So with edits, there are different types of edits. Oh, you thought you could just pay an editor one time and it's all taken care of? No. So you have one type of edit, which some might call a structural edit or a developmental edit. And this is a very broad view where the editor just reads over your work and finds the glaring issues with like plot, character development, these sorts of things. So this process is pretty straightforward. You're giving your manuscript to effectively a professional. I mean, you are paying them, it is their profession. So you're giving your book to a professional who is assumingly well read, and you're asking them to just read your work and give their feedback, give their opinions, their proposals, their suggestions to you, and sometimes critiques. This process might cost $1,000. It might cost, depending on who you go to, maybe $3,000, something like that. Again, remember, you're paying somebody potentially $1,000 or more to just read your book and give you some reviews, private reviews, share their opinions with you privately and suggestions and things. You can choose to listen to those critiques, to those suggestions, or you can choose not to. But the reason you went to them is because you understand that they have probably read tons and tons of books, and their opinion comes with wisdom. It comes with insight. They have seen a lot, they have read a lot. Their opinion should be wiser than what experience you have as an individual. Or at least that's what you're hoping for. Now, after this process, it would probably be wise to go and get another edit. It could be from the same editor. Maybe you want to go to a different editor. This would be a grammatical edit or a line edit. This process would be looking at specifically line for line. Does the flow of the words work? Are there grammatical errors? Did you misspell some words? These things will not be covered in the other kind of edit. The other edit, the person will read over your manuscript, and if, let's say, you wanted to put the word there, THERE, you wanted to put that word. That was the word that was necessary, or that was the word that was required, but you put a different word. You put the there word, which is THEIR. If you use the wrong word, the editor isn't going to circle it and warn you about it. They're literally just going to read over it and keep going. You are not paying them to edit that, to point that out. So they're not going to do it. You came to them for business, not charity. So with the line edit, it's much slower. It's much more intimate. They're picking through your work with a fine pick, fine comb, microscope, all those analogies, right? And that means because they're putting in more work, it's going to cost more money. So this type of edit, the line edit, might cost around $3,000, might cost around $5,000, maybe $7,000, depending on who you're going to and also how long your manuscript is. It takes a long time to do line edits. So if your manuscript is only 60,000 words, that's not so bad. It's fairly short. If you are in a big high fantasy and you're pushing 180,000, 200,000 words, that's a lot of work. A lot of work that's going to cost you a lot of money. So paying for an edit is going to cut your time in half, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. In most cases, these edits will still be done by you. The editor is going to point these things out and say, this is an issue. That is an issue. You need to take care of it. You're not going to just hand off your manuscript to these people and they're just going to make it all perfect. In most cases, I'm sure there's people who do offer that. If they say, give me your manuscript, I will clean it up, I will make it perfect and polished, and if you want to do that, that's cool. But you know what that means? That means when you get it back, you still got to go back and read through it again. Absolutely never, ever give your manuscript to somebody else and let them make edits to your work. Never let somebody else modify your art, your literary art, and then just trust that they did a good job. Never trust that they made your artwork better and then just run to the publishers or to the presses. Sorry. Don't do that. Never ever. Because I promise you, even if they're much wiser than you and even if they're a better writer than you, they're going to do things that you disagree with. And they might be things that maybe, like, realistically, what they're changing makes sense, but in the context of your story and the narrative that you're trying to make, maybe you want people to think that there's no hope in the world. Maybe you want people to think that there is hope in the world and that we should be positive no matter what. Whatever your theme is, an editor, like the expression, too many cooks in the kitchen, another editor will add in a whole new perspective and they're going to change the heart of your story if you let them make the changes. Now, if they just make the suggestions and they say, I think these are things that you should fix, but it's up to you, good luck, that's fine, because still that means the final say so is up to you. They're making suggestions, and whether or not they get changed falls upon you if you go in and make the changes. Now, this is all when it comes to a single book. If we're talking about a series, then it adds in, again, another layer of challenges for you. Because maybe the editor will make certain suggestions. Hey, this doesn't seem good because of blah, blah, blah. And they're making that suggestion because they don't know about your entire series. They don't know about what themes that you're going to put into your book in later, or into your series in later books. Maybe your editor would understand if they had read all 5 of your books in your series, but since they haven't, and they're just on book 1, they don't understand. They make certain suggestions. You go in and change it. And then by the time they get to book 5, they're like, oh, I see what you were trying to do in book 1. Maybe we shouldn't have changed that. Thanks for letting me know now. You as the author can see this big picture. The editor doesn't know this. The editor doesn't see that big picture until they read the whole series. But the editor isn't going to read the whole series and edit the whole series as one. They're going to read each book. You as the author know your story best. And so you can seek professional help, but understand that really no one's going to do it as good as you. You can use professional help to hold your hand, but don't let them take full control of the ship, so to speak. So if you do a developmental edit, it might cost $1,000 to maybe $3,000 per book. And if you do a line edit or grammatical edit, this could cost, $3,000, $5,000, maybe $7,000 per book. So as you can see, getting somebody else to edit your books can be a really expensive route. In short, how long will it take to self-edit a novel series? Years. It'll take a lot of years. And if you decide to go with paying someone else to edit your novel series, how much will it cost? Thousands of dollars. Lots of thousands of dollars. As for me personally, what I'm doing is I am doing it a self-edit route. I've been doing all these years of editing my work myself, which is focusing on the big picture, like developmental edit stuff. But also I'm trying to hone in on the line edits and make sure all of my words are the correct words. I try my best to make sure there's no typos, no grammatical errors, wrong words, bad punctuation, like trying to get that stuff really cleaned up the best that I can do it. And then ultimately, like I said, I'm trying to do it all myself. What I'm leaning on doing at this point is I would like to pay for a developmental edit, but of just the first book in the novel series. I don't plan on doing edits for all of the books in my series. It's just too much. But I would like to have someone who's well read, a professional, look over the first book, because my whole novel series is just a continuation of the first book. If I could have someone look at the first book and find any kind of issues inside it, I'm not a dumb person. I can use context clues. I can figure it out. If this is an issue in the first book, I can see how it could then translate to the other books. Maybe the editor doesn't get to read the other books and point out the problems. But if they pointed out this particular thing in book one, and I know that thing continues in the other books, if I agree with them and I say, this is a problem, I see what you're saying in book one, I'll then take that knowledge and be able to apply it myself in the later books at my own discretion. Ultimately, whatever you want to do, that's up to you, but this is what I'm doing. I'm doing the self-edit, slow, grueling time reading and editing, trying to do it all myself. And if there's any mistakes, there's no us or we or my team will, no, none of that. There's no shifting the blame. There's no shifting accountability. If there's issues, it's on me. I made the mistake. And because I'm owning that, I'm really taking the initiative and trying to give it the time and love that my manuscripts need. But I would like to have someone of significance look it over and at least look over book number 1 to try and find any issues that maybe I'm not seeing. If they've read hundreds of books, maybe they'll have a wisdom that I would never even consider, and I could use that to my advantage. And that's really what the whole paying for an editor should really boil down to. Is it's not about them making your books better. It's about them helping you make your books better. Well, I think this video has gone on long enough. I thought it would be a shorter video, but I think it ended up being a longer one. If so, my bad. Well, I'm going to get off here. Until next time, later.